We're also discussing fashion, and FashionTT is here with us this morning, giving us clothes. We've been changing clothes. We've been talking to some of the best designers in the country, in the world, to be honest. But, you know, we don't get too bossy out here, right?
But
and
why
this
not?
morning...
Why not be boasting
Well, I
about
mean,
it?
you know, I try to be humble sometimes, you know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, but you're boasting about our people, you know? So you're not boasting about yourself.
It's true.
Let people boast about you.
It's true.
You know?
It's true. And we can boast about Richard Young because he's been making sure that we're looking good this morning. But of course, he's been making sure people look good for decades now.
Right.
Good morning, Richard. How you doing?
Morning. That carbon dating. Decades, you know, not years, you know.
That's just experience. That's all it is. It's not about the date. It's about the experience.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
fossilized.
How are you doing this morning, Richard?
I am good. Getting up here early to get here was a little challenging.
Welcome
but
to our life. Welcome to our life on a daily basis. It's great.
I wonder how you all do it. Yeah.
By the grace of God, yes.
You understand? Richard, how important is fashion in the fabric of the country? Like, how important is fashion?
Well, I have a whole belief in our Caribbean aesthetic, which I have been promoting for decades. And that the costuming of how we present ourselves, which is our style, is how I see fashion. You know, it's not just about putting on clothes on naked bodies. It's about making a brand about who you are. So that I remember one time this lady I worked with, she said she was in Milan and she was walking down the street. She wore Heather Jones, she wore the cloth. People knew she was Caribbean.
Right.
They just looked across and say, you're from the Caribbean. And when you're doing that kind of brand identity, I think that is what fashion needs to represent. And having spoken to my brother a while ago, and that's what I believe in as well, working with the other performing art. All of the art have to corral together to make this brand identity that is Caribbean. And Trinbagonian fashion is in the front, and I will say, as Carrie say, we can boast. We can boast. We are the most exhibitionistic of the region, and that's why our carnival is so celebrated. But Caribbean style is housed here. It's resident in this place. We have a plethora of designers, which FashionTT represents. I have been honored to be given the job of creative director for this trust, which is the Global Value Chain Trust, to present these designers. So these 11 frontline designers are going to be presented to the world, backed by a government initiative, which I think is phenomenal. I have been working on this for my entire life, the decades you talked about. And so now that I got this chance to work with them and to synergize and to integrate, I am like exploding. So I am very excited about doing it. So that's why I could have come here this early this morning, because we are now doing the feel-good feel of fashion, what people in the world are calling feel-good and resort wear, and which is what is us in our DNA.
Yeah.
And more so, feel-good is important now because of the pandemic. We want to feel luxurious but comfortable, you know, so breathing fabrics and textiles that represent that island ethos, the world is gravitating to. So it's time for us to jump on that bandwagon, go in the front line and identify who we are. And so that's why I'm doing it.
Richard, sorry, Carrie, I'm curious as to the manufacturing costs of these things, because they are really good quality.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I imagine, as your brother was saying, we don't manufacture a lot of the raw materials here in Trinidad and Tobago. So how expensive is it to practically continue just keep producing all these clothes?
That's a challenge. We have to find that intersection in the branding of this stuff, because otherwise we'll just be cutting raw materials that come from somewhere else, as he mentioned.
Yeah.
So we have to now impart part of our soul. We have to transpose ourselves into the textile. So we either do surface treatment, like all the things you're doing here. There's applique, there's collage, there's dyeing, there is batiking. You have to put some ingredient into it that represents our eclecticism. So that is one of the things, and that carries the cost up. You know, so we are not fast fashion. This is a more slow fashion thing. And this is about going for niche markets that are fascinated by the appeal that we represent. So in our target, coming from FashionTT, is to look for those markets that want that difference. They want that uniqueness, that distinctiveness, and that's where we're going. So we are aligning with a lot of where our missions are, our diplomatic missions are, and our embassies. We're going to do that as the portal in. And wherever there is diasporic Caribbean reference, it's an easy, because I've done Montreal Caribbean Fashion Week, Toronto Caribbean Fashion Week, Miami, New York, all through the region, French, Dutch, English-speaking spaces I've gone. So I have done that groundwork that positions me to service FashionTT's aim right now. So we're going to be looking through the region because intra-regionality was also left out. We don't do that. We don't do enough of that.
Right.
You know, like when I played Tree Canal in Dominica, I had all the models singing. They were fascinated, never heard of them. And so we don't do enough of that. And that's what we need to do with the fashion and the arts because it's all about creative energy. And we can support each other. When you go to a shop in one of the more the hotels in the region, there are tourists walking away thinking they have Caribbean wear. But when you look, it's made in Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, China, India, and they are very excited that they got this thing and they go back to Indiana or wherever and they talk the conversation. Because I got this in the Caribbean and it's not Caribbean. And so part of my mission is to change the fact that people think Caribbean clothes is wearing a Bermuda short, Hawaiian shirt, and a Panama hat.
Right.
And none of those geographic adjectives belong in the region. But that's what people have grown up thinking is Caribbean. And Caribbean is much more than that kind of monkey-like perception of who we are.
Well,
you know?
that leads me to my question, because you mentioned earlier that somebody was walking on the road in a local designer's clothing and somebody identified them like, that is Caribbean. And all. What is it that makes our style distinctly and the signature of it Caribbean that you can identify it?
And it has to do with the sachet and the swagger and the character. So that is what I'm also believing. That's why it has to be integrated with the music. Brother Resistance has been in a lot of my shows as well over the years. So I've always integrated him. When he came first, he said, "You have me in a fashion show?" I said, "Yes, because we need to be moving to the music of the space. It's ridiculous to wear a Yankees hat and ice hockey t-shirt and sing Trinity to the Bone." And we have been doing that for years, so I can imagine the smoke coming from anthropologists and people looking in. How are you celebrating your culture and you're wearing synthetic fabrics that represent somebody else? So we need to be, so when Robert was doing that with David Rudder, he made a jacket called the Rudder Jacket. So when he performed in Zenith in Paris, he was in a brand. He came with the music and the look.
So we need that symbiotic relationship to
definitely need to have
that
synergy.
Richard, I thank you so much for all the work that you have been doing. And thank you so much for joining us this morning from early to make sure we're dressed and looking good. We're going to take a quick break and we come back. We still have one more interview before we go to the top of the hour, all right? So we take that quick break and come back with more inside the Now Morning Show.